This is Viterbi Voices, the podcast, your chance to hear stories about research, classes, student life, and more directly from our faculty, students, and other members of the engineering community here at the University of Southern California.
This is episode 111 and a new installment in our series, This Viterbi Life. We will be hearing from two students about their journeys in choosing both biomedical engineering and pre-med. Stay tuned for a thought-provoking episode.
Welcome back into Viterbi Voices. This is episode
111.
111.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird one to say.
111.
Yeah.
111. 111. 111. Yeah, that is weird.
111. I think 111 is
111 is better. Episode 111. As usual, I am one of your co-hosts. My name is Paul Ledesma. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
And my name is Rhea Chowdhury. I'm a senior studying biomedical engineering here at USC.
And I'm Dominie. I'm a sophomore studying biomedical engineering with a minor in classical perspectives.
So you just like share. You just got one name, just Dominie.
Oh.
She's like Shakira.
It's a unique name.
Shakira.
It's a unique name.
It is a unique
is.
name. There is no one else like that. That's correct. Well, this episode is a one that you bring to us, Dominie. And what do you got for us today?
Yeah, so it's actually about pre-med and biomedical engineering. So I am actually, it's very personal for me because I'm at a point where I'm trying to figure out if I want to do biomedical industry or I want to pursue medical school. And it's actually something that a lot of biomedical engineering students have to choose or decide on. And so I wanted to hear the stories behind these decisions, and I interviewed two people, one person, Rhea here.
Hello.
Who,
Taking over Rhea.
yeah, ultimately decided to pursue the biomedical industry. And then on the flip side, Nina, the second person, she ultimately decided to pursue medical school. So
to clarify something, this isn't something that biomedical engineers need to choose. It's not like that's an option, but it's something that both of you have grappled with because, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but essentially you were thinking medical school before you got here, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and so now you're trying to figure out, okay, is that what I want to do, or am I good with biomedical engineering?
Yeah.
And that is something that I think is common, where we have students coming out of high school thinking, well, maybe I'll want to go to med school, or thinking med school and thinking biomedical engineering is a great path to do that, which it totally is, and it works great. But sometimes students realize, maybe I don't want to do that. And am I correct in saying when you start realizing you don't want to do that, do you feel bad?
No, it's just, I think, and I'm interviewed on this episode, so you'll hear this opinion from me later, but in high school, I didn't even know what biomedical engineering was. I didn't know what medical devices were. You don't really get exposure to that very much in high school. So I came into college pre-med because I was like, okay, either I'm going to be an engineer or a doctor. And I kind of like medicine more, so I'm going to go that way. But then once I got to college, I realized what engineering was and what biomedical engineering industry looked like. And I didn't feel bad for shifting. I felt like my skills fit industry.
Okay.
And yeah.
What do you think?
Well, actually, I haven't made a decision yet.
Right. But is it like were you always thinking med school?
Yeah, it's always been at the back of my mind. And most of it just stems from my father being a doctor and having that huge influence on my life. And then just the same as Rhea just said, knowing a lot about the medical profession, seeing it firsthand, obviously hearing it from my dad, and then coming into college and then realizing, wow, there's this engineering field that I did not know about, and
you
learning
don't see
that.
A lot of.
Yeah, not in high school.
Yeah, I think part of it is that a lot of medical devices are used with older adults and other populations that you may not necessarily interact with in high school. But you go to your doctor every year. You have a direct interface. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And for other engineers, they may not face these kinds of decisions. Again, like you were saying, all biomedical engineers don't go through this decision process. But things like electrical engineering, things like computer science, you kind of have a very clear path forward, or at least you kind of know what sort of things people do with your major. Whereas biomedical engineering is an interesting path to study because there are a lot of huge, like very different options that people pursue that can go into medical school, that can go into research, that can go into industry. There's a huge like variety of opportunities for biomedical engineers. So I think it's interesting that we kind of have to go through this process where we ultimately have to sort of decide on a path to go. It's not necessarily set in stone. You can always shift from one to the other later on.
I would argue that every engineering discipline feels that way, though.
Really? Do you think so?
Oh, biomedical engineers, they know what they're doing. They're working on medical devices. That's cool. I'm an EE. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to work on. So I would argue, I think that you all have a very egocentric point of view.
We're both BME, which is
natural. Like the problems that you deal with are obviously yours, and I'm not. I don't want to say they're wrong, but what's interesting is that you don't think that anyone else has those issues. I think
everyone goes through. I think all engineers go through some kind of like career crisis in some form.
That's my point.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? I don't know, but it's obvious they don't have that problem.
Yeah. It's an interesting. I don't know. I think biomedical engineering, like especially coming in with the idea of pre-med, there's a lot of people studying completely different paths that end up with pre-med, I think is what I'm trying to say. And biomedical engineers are one group of people that can do that, but there's also a lot of other things that happen with biomedical engineering.
Is it because people that are pre-med don't have the career crisis? Because it's just a predetermined fact that you're going to medical school, so like you don't worry about. Like, is that the issue? Like when you're dealing with your peers, like you just see them in this state of not bliss, but you see them in the state of like, well, they're not worried about those job things.
A lot of pre-meds are like a lot of pre-meds definitely are like that.
Are they though?
Yeah. They come into college and they're full speed ahead.
For sure.
For medical school, right? So that's my point. So that's my point. They don't have this career crisis that you're all pointing out. So your question is, from an engineering perspective, what is the best solution for you? Where is the least amount of friction ahead? And so you're just seeing, do I go pre-med or do I go looking for jobs? And you're thinking, well, looking for jobs sounds like this crisis. It's a hard thing. There's lots of questions. I don't know what I'll do. I would argue that is a far more advantageous place to be. And you should just go out. Like the real question is, do you want to be a doctor or not?
Yeah.
But it's a little bit of a misnomer to say like, the career, like I guess is what I'm getting at is like I completely validate your feelings that there's a lot of hard decisions that you have to make, but that's true everyone.
Yeah. I guess this episode is really great because it tackles maybe some of the more common options that a lot of prospective students come into biomedical engineering with. A lot of them come into it thinking, I'm definitely going to be pre-med.
Right.
So we just kind of wanted to address that.
Did you... one of the things I see a lot with biomedical engineers is the definite wanting to be pre-med and then realizing, oh, no, I'm not going to be. Or not no, but, okay, you know what, I've realized more, I've discovered something else and I don't want to be. And I guess I was asking earlier whether you felt guilty because that's what I was assuming. There's part of that feeling of like, I've had this plan and now I'm changing my plan and I feel bad about that.
Yeah, actually what I discovered from this episode from both Rhea and Nina is that they never really came in full send, like, I'm pre-med, I'm going to medical school. Both of them, until their, I'd say, sophomore, junior year, were debating between the two.
That's great.
So it seems to me that biomedical engineering students, into their sophomore, junior year, they're not really sure what they want to do yet.
That sounds good. Then. That sounds really good. That this fact of it's not like a decision you have to make before you get here.
Right.
It's not a decision that you have to make incredibly early on. You just start going down that path and you start deciding. It is a hard decision to make because you do have to kind of pull some levers in one direction or the other to make sure that it works. But that you do have those options, which I think is an advantageous part of it. And I think the thing that I would say over and over again, because I know you've struggled with this decision, I know you earlier were struggling with that decision, you have incredibly strong choices either way. I think that's the part I always want to tell you guys about, is that if you are ever feeling bad about it or worried about it, it's like, well, just go after the thing that really that you like the most, that sounds the coolest to you. I know that's oversimplifying a lot of it. It's a very complicated decision process to be making, but it sounds like you guys are making those decisions well, and Dominie, you're still working your way through it.
Yeah, I was going to say another thing is both of the, Rhea and Nina, who I talked to, they had these pivotal moments that made them decide one path over the other.
Oh, cool.
And those pivotal moments almost came by chance, or not by chance, but there's something that they didn't foresee happening, and something that happened during their undergraduate career, their sophomore or junior year, that they didn't see coming, and then it happened, and they're like, wow, okay, now my decision is a lot clearer. Now I can make that
Just
decision.
starts to make sense. You just have to go through that process.
Yeah, and I think a large part of it is coming into college with a very like open mind and being open to those opportunities, because you're not going to have some kind of defining moment if you don't open yourself up to that opportunity.
Exactly.
I was having a hard way of getting around back to it, but that's kind of what I'm getting at, which is to students that are listening right now, I guess the thing I want to make sure we're clear about before we go into this episode is that you don't need to know ahead of time. There aren't a certain set of things that have to happen. And everyone makes their own decision at a different point. And those students are all very successful any stretch of the way, any which way they end up going down that road. Because I don't want people to freak out unnecessarily. And knowing that if you are thinking about medical school in high school, biomedical engineering is a great opportunity, because I think what's cool about this is that you're allowed this opportunity to debate it out at this stage when others may have not.
Yeah.
And you have some really great opportunities at either end of this. And I think that's the cool part about this. And so when people are thinking, you're here, both of you have already said this, there's so much that happens to you without you knowing it, whether that's in the curriculum or outside the curriculum, or just things that you discover about devices or professions or companies. They're like, oh, that's really cool. I want to do that. And something just kind of bright and shiny opens up, and oh, that's exactly what I want to see. So that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Awesome. Yeah, you just have a lot more freedom. Freedom to be curious, I would say. And that's kind of what you just said, Rhea, is my motto going forward in making this decision, is that I'm just going to do the things I'm interested in, and see where that takes me.
Cool. It's very pressure filled though for planners like the two of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of what I was getting at earlier, is that, and I think that's very similar to some of our audience that are thinking biomedical engineering. And they're like, no, I want to know now.
Yeah.
Like, what's my plan? What do I got to do? And it's like, so I guess that's a nice echo to hear back, which is, no matter how much you plan, how much you research, you look into it, you can't make a better decision, or you can't make an earlier decision. You just got to go with it. So that's great. That's great news. Cool. Well, Dominie, thanks for bringing this, and thank you for taking such a personal journey with us as you're going through this. I know we were talking about it earlier before you started going down this road, so I'm glad that you did and kind of explored it, and hopefully it helped you.
Yeah, it helped me a lot.
Did it?
It came at a prime moment in my life, really.
No, but this was her pivotal moment, actually.
This is my pivotal moment.
Maybe.
I went from planner to, now seeking many different things.
You're more comfortable knowing that the decision is coming and things will happen, but you haven't made the decision yet.
No, I haven't made a decision.
Okay, cool.
But I'm more comfortable in not making the decision very imminently, if that makes sense.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, well, let's get out of the way. We've been here for long enough. Before I do, though, last week's episode, we didn't do our quick fire questions with Dr. McNitt Gray.
Oh,
very
man.
upset. Because
that would have been so good, too. I completely forgot.
So awesome. It would have been so killer. And I'm giving you time to do it now.
Yes.
Because that would have been hilarious. I kind of feel like you need to go to her and have an appendix.
Do a follow-up, like a bonus episode or something later.
Of just
like a little
quick
addition.
Fire, her hot takes on those questions.
That'd be super fun.
And we had a visitor earlier this week through our Explore USC program who was sitting in that chair, and she was just all about the podcast.
Oh, what?
So much. So much.
That's so awesome.
And I finally said, do you know that this is where we record it? And she literally jumped up from her chair and said, is this where Rhea sits?
Oh, that's so awesome.
And she was kind of losing it a little bit because she's a self-admitted super fan.
Funny.
And asked where you were.
I love everything
you weren't
about
here
that.
on Tuesday. But was asking where you were.
Yeah.
And then I don't know whether I want to reward her with this, but she goes, can I get a shout out on the podcast?
I said,
we'll decide, but I'll give it to her. So Lucinda Chang, if you're listening, We love that you're listening. We love that you have this all down. Although she did say that she was really excited to meet you, and then she goes, "Who's the other guy in that podcast? Who's the other guy? Who's the other guy? What's his name? What's his name?" And I'm looking at her, and then she and it's this weird kind of like pause, and she goes, "Daniel, is it Daniel? Daniel, yes, Daniel." And then she realized Daniel was on the student panel. She goes, "Was that Daniel?" I was like, "Yeah, that was Daniel." She goes, "Oh my God, I didn't even put two and two together." And then I let this go for a while. I said, I'm on the podcast. And I'm the only one on all 110 episodes.
And you intro every single episode. It starts with your voice.
I was a little taken back, and I was like, I was going to let her go. But I was just kind of giving her like a kind of just playful hard time. And she straight looks at me right back and goes, "You're in it from time to time." But it's really like 45 minutes of Rhea and Daniel.
Okay. I mean, I'll take it, but maybe listen to a couple more episodes.
So I'm like, that's cool. I didn't give it a hard time, but I wanted to tell you about that. I wanted to share that, and now it's actually on the podcast itself. Sorry, Dominie, for taking over your episode.
No, I'm loving it.
But it was one of the funniest things. I let her go with it. It's fine. I have no bad feelings about it, but I was just like, this is the funniest story I've ever heard. I'm like, well, I guess we got to do more faculty episodes. We've been doing too many.
A lot of student ones.
Yeah.
All right, I have some quick fire questions for Dominie before we close out this intro. So I'm not going to time you, but you have to answer these as quick as possible. Okay?
Okay.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Mint chocolate chip.
Say a word in Spanish.
Hola.
Do you believe in fate?
Yes.
Favorite number?
15.
Who has it easier, men or women?
Men.
Have you ever worn socks with sandals?
Yes. Birkenstocks.
Yeah, socks and stocks. Name a primate.
Ooh, there's a term for that?
Yeah, socks and stocks.
That question just weirds me out every time it's asked, and the fact that everybody keeps saying yes to it is bothering me so much.
It gets
and then
cold.
you like affirmed it. You're
yes.
Like, socks and stocks.
That's a thing.
No.
My roommates are from Portland. It's totally a thing.
Let that be in Portland then.
Don't let it come to LA.
No.
Okay, name a primate besides monkeys and apes.
Orangutans?
I think Daniel said the same thing. That's so funny. Why can't we tickle ourselves?
Because we expect it.
What does a person need to be happy?
Family.
Is there such thing as objective beauty?
No.
What's the best age?
22.
If Voldemort offered you a hug, would you accept?
Not a Harry Potter fan, but sure.
Thank you.
Harry Potter.
God, you're great.
Are you not a Harry Potter fan either?
No.
Paul! Okay,
Never
anyway.
seen a minute, never read a word. I'm very happy about that.
Is double dipping at a party ever acceptable?
Maybe.
Maybe. All right, that's all our quick fire questions.
It's okay. This is still my reaction to all of these. We need a camera on the person who's making these answers because the facial reactions are gold.
Yeah, they're so funny.
Daniel's were gold, Shintaro's were gold, yours were great.
Mine is like answering and being like, I don't know.
Yeah.
No,
it's funny because both Daniel and Shintaro make the same face. Well, Daniel was having a crisis while answering
Daniel
them.
was stressed out.
No,
Yeah.
the primate one stressed me out. I was like,
It's like a test.
yeah.
All right.
Wow, this is way too long. Of an
Yeah,
intro.
we
Sorry.
can get out of the way.
Let's get out of the way. Take it away, Dominie, with your episode.
Hey guys, I'm Dominie. I'm a sophomore studying biomedical engineering and have recently declared pre-med. I've noticed that for quite a few biomedical engineering students, myself included, choosing between the engineering and medical profession can be difficult and stressful, especially in the first 2 years of college. This Viterbi Life episode is going to explore the reasons why biomedical engineering students declare pre-med and the stories behind their decisions to ultimately pursue the engineering industry over medical school, or conversely, medical school over the engineering industry. First, I interviewed Rhea, who began her undergraduate career as pre-med and in her junior year recognized that she loved engineering and wanted to work in industry and develop health solutions that have the potential to impact large populations of people. Okay, hi Rhea.
Hello.
So I guess start by introducing yourself. I'm sure the listeners have heard this many times.
Hopefully you guys recognize my voice maybe. But my name's Rhea. I'm a senior studying biomedical engineering, and I have a minor in healthcare studies through the School of Medicine. So I think that's kind of where we can start.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I think everyone has a different definition of biomedical engineering, and so I wanted to ask you, what does biomedical engineering mean to you?
Yeah, so biomedical engineering, I guess the reason I came into biomedical engineering was when I was exiting high school, I was really into like biology, and then I loved the field of medicine, and I thought that was really interesting, but I also really liked, I guess, like hands-on and like tangible projects and solutions to like medical problems rather than just researching about the root cause of issues. I wanted to help solve them, and I saw that mostly in biomedical engineering programs rather than biology or like biochemistry, but that was still the field that I wanted to learn the most about. Like that was the science that was the most interesting to me. So for me, biomedical engineering is combining all of those different scientific fields like biology, chemistry, molecular biology, whatever, along with physics, math, and engineering principles to create tangible solutions to like big healthcare problems.
And you were originally pre-med, from my understanding. So can you talk a little bit about why you were originally pre-med?
Yeah, and I'm sure this will resonate with a lot of people, but I think growing up, one of the few professions that I interacted with very frequently was medicine. And for me personally, that journey was through sports medicine, because I was a gymnast for 10 years, and then I did swimming and dance and track and cross country all through high school. And I would get injured a lot, especially in gymnastics. So my sports medicine doctor became like my best friend. I would like go see him pretty often because I needed that kind of help. And to me, he was someone who was like helping athletes empower themselves and perform the best. And I thought that was a really, really cool job, and I thought that was a really rewarding job. And he was making a difference and allowing these people to pursue their craft at like the highest level. And I thought that was awesome. And I was interested in science and things at the time. So I was like, okay, like I can use science and my knowledge of that to bring good to people and like help people. So medicine was something that inspired me that way. And then throughout high school, I continued pursuing medical type stuff. I was lucky to grow up in the Bay Area, so I did an internship type thing this summer after my sophomore year at Stanford in their medical school, where I was doing cardiothoracic surgery, which was super interesting on like pig hearts. It like obviously wasn't on like people or anything, but on pig hearts we were doing that program and learning how to do basic sutures and basic surgical procedures, which was awesome. Like that was so interesting to me, and that was just like kind of reinforced my interest in the field. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to go to college, be pre-med. But like now looking back on it, there wasn't anything else I was looking at. I didn't really have the most open mind in high school when I was looking for careers and options. But medicine was something that I knew inspired me and that I really enjoyed. So that was why I came into senior year of high school applying for things like looking at pre-med options, and then ultimately started college pre-med as well. And I think I was pre-med for 2.5 years, which is just over like halfway of college.
So it sounds like this was the most familiar path to you from like your high school experiences. I think that's pretty common, and that a lot of people don't know what exactly engineering industry is like. I wanted to ask you, what led you to ultimately decide to pursue the
engineering side? I guess one big part of it was my sophomore year. I was really involved in entrepreneurship, and that kind of happened by accident. Like me and a couple of other friends that were also biomedical engineers, actually, and one CS student, we got together and entered the Missy Entrepreneurship Prize competition, which is a entrepreneurship competition on campus. and we came up with a proposal for a product that was healthcare oriented, and like at a very high level, it was an app that was designed to help eliminate pre-hospital delays for stroke patients, so getting them to the hospital faster through a variety of means. But that was something that was like really empowering to me, because I was like, this is so cool, because I'm using my engineering background and technical skills to still solve a medical problem and make an impact in the world. And for me, what I found out through that entrepreneurship competition, and then navigating the rest of my like medical courses and biomedical courses, is that while a physician can make a really big impact on a person-to-person basis and a patient-to-patient basis, engineering had the potential, in my mind, to impact huge amounts of people and to use innovation and science to change the face of the medical field rather than like working on a patient-to-patient basis. And I still like my minor that I was talking about earlier is in healthcare studies, and that's in the School of Medicine. And I take a lot of medical classes from physicians in like all of the classes in that minor are actually taught by physicians. And I still have so much respect and like for them and what they do. And I think that doctors are incredibly important, instrumental to the field. But for me personally, I think because of the reason I wanted to enter the field was making as big of an impact as possible in the field of medicine, engineering was like a better fit for me. So then after my junior year, I interned at Edwards Life Sciences, which is a pretty big medical device company, and they work solely in the cardiovascular space. My junior year actually was when I was making that pivotal decision of whether I wanted to stick with pre-med or not. And I ended up officially kind of changing career paths halfway through junior year. And I joke that part of that was that I had to take the second half of OChem, and that's not required for our major, but it was for like the pre-med kind of courses that you have to take. And for me, like that class wasn't the only turning point. It was just kind of the needle that broke, was it the needle that broke I don't know, the straw that broke the donkey's, not a needle in a haystack, the straw that broke the donkey's back, I think is the idiom, whatever. But that was like the last straw basically for me, and that was because I was taking other engineering courses at the same time as this OChem course, and my engineering classes were just so much more interesting to me, and OChem to me felt like something that I really had to put a lot of effort in to study because it didn't come inherently to me. And I was like, this doesn't seem like the skill set that I have. I'm not interested in this. And if engineering is something that I know that I like, then I should drop this class and take something else and just pursue engineering wholeheartedly. And I can always come back to medicine if I want. Like, I think something that we have to come to terms with in college is that your first job isn't your last job, and you can always come back to things if you want to go back. Like, your career isn't decided right after college. And if medicine is something that I want to pursue later, that I still have that option. I've taken the majority of the classes. But for me right now, just given my skill set, my interest and my passions, like engineering and industry is just a better fit for me at the moment. And my internship at Edwards was amazing, and I had a really, really good time. And
yeah, I wanted to ask you, so what was surprising about that experience? Because I'm assuming prior to that you didn't have any industry experience.
Nope, not at all.
What were you expecting, and did everything kind of align with your expectations or differ?
Yeah, I tried to go in with as open of a mind as possible. All the recruiting for that stuff happened in fall of junior year. So I was just kind of, honestly, I was like just a sheep in that process. I was just following everyone else that was applying, and I was like, okay, people are applying to these companies, I'll apply to these companies too, and they come to campus and it's really easy to do that. So I was like, okay, I'll just throw my name in the ring. And then I ended up having a really good conversation with recruiters from Edwards, and then I got an interview and got the position, and I signed it before I even really knew what was going on. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, well, perfect. This works as a great opportunity for me to kind of test out engineering and see if it is for me. And what surprised me the most was that I was expecting something very corporate. I was expecting like something that kind of would be more removed from healthcare. I thought it would be like very engineering, very like operations, very like manufacturing, and not like at all kind of patient facing. That was my fear, I guess. It wasn't necessarily my expectation. It wasn't my hope, but it was my fear that it was going to be like that. And it wasn't like that at all. The first day I walked into work, like half the people I was working with were in scrubs, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. Because I was like, I don't even have to be pre-med to wear scrubs. Like, this is great. And then I ended up working with just such amazing people. And this isn't even unique to Edwards, too. My friends at other medical device companies have experienced the same thing, where everyone is there because they want to make medical devices, which at their like core are designed to make people's lives better and make people live healthier, happier lives. And that's something that, especially at Edwards, people seem to really, really believe in. And we would always bring up patients when we were discussing how our projects and things were working. And I was working in manufacturing, which is dealing with the manufacturing process of these devices themselves, which is really important because that's like the safety and efficacy and quality of that manufacturing process is what makes those devices reliable and powerful. So like for our group, it was really important to be doing our job well because that was the device that was going to be going into a patient. So everyone would be like, we can't have these kinds of quality, like it needs to be better, like we need to be improving this, this, and this because our patient is who we're serving. And I was like, this is awesome. Like they're using engineering and things that I really enjoy, but they still care a lot about the patient and about the health of the people that they're serving.
So that was that point where it affirmed your passion for engineering, and then after graduation, is that when you decided that that's what you want to do?
I guess. I think, so for me, because I had such a positive experience, because the people I was working with were inspiring and driven, I was like, okay, I love this company, I love this idea of industry, but I was still a little bit cautious, and I was still like entering senior year applying to other things because I was like, is this like the best fit for me? I still think of myself as a very like analytical, like high level organization type person as in terms of my skill set. So I was like, maybe consulting is another fit. Like I had a good time at manufacturing for this biotech company, but maybe consulting for other biotech companies could be another option. So I was still keeping my options open. But ultimately, I ended up getting a return offer from Edwards. They have this amazing rotational program where you can rotate between different positions throughout the company and different locations too, which is really fun.
Yeah.
So for me, that just seemed like the best fit because I'm working for this company that I know I love that has a mission that I really identify with, but I can try out the different positions and see what fits me the best. Because so that way I'm still kind of exploring my career options after graduation while being locked into a company. So that worked out really well for me. My passion for engineering was definitely reaffirmed through that internship. And throughout senior year, while I'm taking my more technical classes, it's really interesting to finally take classes that I can see an application for because I have that context in the back of my mind. And our senior design project is really cool because you build a medical device, basically. So yeah, I guess that's kind of, that internship really helped confirm my passions, help me like solidify a career decision, and really like push me towards industry all the way.
And you mentioned previously that, you know, college is not the end all and you can always decide to pursue medicine in the future.
Yeah.
Are you keeping that option open, would you say?
I think one of the biggest transitions that happened for me from high school to college was just keeping a more open mind in general. I think in high school I was very like, okay, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to go into medicine, this is all I'm going to do. And I kind of walked out of high school with blinders on, and then college just opened that up to me because I learned that there were other things that you could do and other careers you could pursue while still being in the healthcare industry and working in healthcare. And that applies to other things too. Like there's jobs outside engineering and finance and whatever, and college really helps you to understand that. But I like to say that I'd keep all my options open. I think that's super important. But at the same time, like mentally, I am committed to industry because I think one of my like core values is when I'm doing something, I want to like put all of my effort in and really like put in as much effort as I can, because I don't think you can get like a good idea of a position or a firm if you're not 100% thrown into it. If you're not giving your 100%, then I don't think you're getting like that real experience, because if you're kind of half-heartedly doing it, you're going to get a half-hearted experience out of it. So for me, this program that I'm doing is 18 months, and then after that I make a decision as to whether I want to stay or if I want to switch. So that's like a perfect position for me to be in, because I can like grind for 18 months, really commit myself to figuring out if this is what I want to do. and then go from there. But I'm keeping my options open after that for sure.
Yeah.
Like I think an open mind is really important.
Right.
But for now, I'm committed. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Yeah,
That
of
was really
course.
interesting.
Yeah.
And I really loved how you talked about your passion for engineering, but also really respecting those that decide to, you know, go on that medical school path.
Yeah, and a lot of my really close friends at school, especially because I started my college career pre-med, a lot of my really good BME friends are still pre-med and still pursuing that, and I think that's incredibly valid. And like, the medical field needs a team. Like, it needs doctors, engineers, and all sorts of different people working together, because that's the only way that the field is going to advance. Like, we can't just have all the doctors become engineers or vice versa, because someone needs to be making these devices, someone needs to be implementing these devices. Doctors have a much better understanding of the human body. They have those kinds of technical skills, and that kind of, like, they can implement what we're building in the lab. We have a limited knowledge of that, and they have a medical knowledge that we need to, like, work together with. So I have nothing but, like, the most respect for people that stuck with pre-med and are going to be physicians.
And in the end, you are all under this umbrella that is trying to help people, you know, with their health, with their pain, and you're collaborating in the end, right?
Exactly.
So.
And I think something that's really interesting now, especially with looking at the field, is that there's people doing majors and stuff that you wouldn't even traditionally associate with medicine, like people doing computer science and applying that towards like digital healthcare, people doing mechanical engineering and working on prosthetics, stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of different applications with different skill sets that will still like be in the healthcare industry. So I think there's a lot of ways to approach it.
Next, I interviewed Nina, who has a completely different journey. She came into college with little intention of pursuing medical school. It wasn't until the end of her sophomore year that she realized her passion for interacting with patients and working with them to solve their health problems. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself, you know, your name, maybe what you do outside of school?
Sure. So my name is Nina Singh. I'm a biomedical engineering major, and I'm pre-med. Outside of school, I like doing rock climbing and different types of art.
Okay, awesome. So what was the story behind your decision to be both pre-med and BME?
Sure. So the BME definitely came first for me, where I wasn't exactly sure that I wanted to go into medicine when I started college. For me, the reason I went BME is I had spent a lot of time in high school doing biology research, and I discovered that I really liked the research, but one thing that kind of bugged me was that I was working on a multi-year project, and kind of every day we would come in and do the same protocol, and I wasn't really able to change what we would do the next day or kind of change the outcomes at all, because we were just kind of observing what happened. So I really liked all of the biology behind it, but I wanted more control over what was happening, and so I chose BME. As for pre-med, I had some ideas about potentially being pre-med when I first started at USC, but I kind of didn't know all that much about what it would actually mean to kind of be a doctor, and didn't have that much experience shadowing and stuff. I actually had a chronic disease in high school, and so most of my experience was kind of on the other end, being a patient. But as I kind of had some more distance from my high school experiences and was a little bit more open about potentially being on the other side of that, I started to shadow more and do some clinical volunteering, and I discovered that I actually really liked the clinical side of things too.
Can you talk about your experience doing research here at USC and how that fit into your ultimate decision to continue pursuing both med school and biomedical engineering?
Sure. So at USC, I knew that I wanted to kind of transition from biology research to something a little bit more engineering focused. I actually don't do research in the biomedical engineering department per se, but I do engineering research that has a bio-related focus. So what I'm working on, and what I've been working on for the past several years here, is building mechanical and math models of cilia in the mechanical engineering department. Basically, what we're trying to do is that people understand the biological structure of cilia, which are these little hairs in different parts of your body that move fluid around. But based on that biological structure alone, they don't understand why cilia move in the way that they do. They can't explain why cilia beat asymmetrically instead of symmetrically, and they can't explain how they coordinate in traveling waves like ocean waves. And so what we're trying to do is build mechanical and mathematical models that have no biological components whatsoever to see if we can replicate those same patterns and explain them using some concepts in fluid dynamics.
You're in the process of hearing back from medical schools right now. Do you plan to do research in medical school?
Yeah, so I definitely want to keep doing research in medical school and in my career in general. I actually thought about doing an MD PhD for a long time as an outlet for that. But for several reasons, I decided that at this point in my career, doing the MD makes more sense for me. I think that I definitely want to continue doing research during the time that I have in med school, and that I want to get further research training for sure. But for me, doing the PhD after the first 2 years of med school, when I'm not entirely sure what specialty I want to be, doesn't make as much sense as doing it kind of after residency or perhaps during or after fellowship when I have a pretty good idea what clinical specialty I'm going to be.
During your undergraduate career, is there any point where you thought you'd drop pre-med, or were you pretty committed the entire time?
So definitely in the beginning, I wasn't really sure that I wanted to be pre-med. I would say for the first 2 years or so. So it was less of a once I decided to be pre-med, I was thinking of dropping it, and more of I was never sure that I wanted to do it in the first place until kind of the end of sophomore year, maybe.
Oh, okay. Is there something that happened that changed your perspective on it, or?
Yeah, sort of. I think that it was kind of gradual in terms of being able to see more of the other side of things, shadowing and things like that. But also I did a hackathon at the end of my sophomore year that was called Hack for Health. And basically what happened is that one of the labs here at USC hosted a hackathon where they brought in a bunch of cancer patients, and they brought in a lot of people from different disciplines. And they kind of told them, you have, I think it was 3 days, to build some kind of new technology that will improve the lives of cancer patients. And what I discovered during that hackathon is that, like previous hackathons that I had done, I really did enjoy the technical side of things. But what I enjoyed more in that instance was actually talking to patients and figuring out what their problems were. I liked working with them to figure out what solutions we could build that would address those problems in a way that they would actually want to use it. We ended up building a medication management app based entirely on the needs of this one patient that we met. She kind of opened up to us in a lot of ways, not just telling us about her medication management problems, but also speaking a lot more generally about other problems that she had as a cancer patient. And I realized that I kind of wanted to not only build engineering solutions to those problems, but also be more on the patient-facing side and talk more to them to figure out how I could address their other problems that weren't necessarily engineering problems.
That's really interesting. Do you think that your biomedical engineering background is going to help you in the medical profession?
Yeah, I think that engineering is definitely a really unique background to have going into medicine. I think that it's not necessarily what a lot of people think it is, where they think perhaps because you have a biomedical engineering background, you'll understand like the devices and stuff that you work with better. I think that's partly true, but I think for me, the more valuable thing that I see from BME is twofold. I think the first part is learning how to pick up a lot of different things really quickly, because our major kind of encompasses so many different disciplines, and learning how to understand a single topic from many different perspectives instead of just the traditional biology one. I think that BMEs are also, or all engineers really, are forced to be very collaborative, because for a lot of our projects, we really can't do anything without having a lot more engineers working with us. So I think learning how to collaborate across disciplines, but also just with other people in general, is something that is unique, because a lot of other traditional pre-medical majors are not necessarily, they don't have to emphasize collaboration as much because of the nature of some of the work that's being done. Not to say that those people aren't collaborative or anything, but just it's kind of built into our major. So I think having all of those perspectives from my different teamwork experiences as a BME will help me work better in teams in the clinic, or at least that's what I'm hoping.
I'm curious because I think I'm at that point where I'm deciding pre-med or BME or both, and also deciding what extracurriculars to do to position myself, for industry and maybe for med school. So was wondering if you could talk about what extracurricular activities you decided to do that maybe positioned you, or that you're just passionate about, that related to both biomedical engineering and medical school, or just one?
Sure, yeah. So for me, I definitely struggled with that a lot too. Freshman year, I tried doing a lot of different extracurriculars. I was actually in 9 things at one point, and it was just not good. But I kind of learned through doing that was not a good strategy. And in order to figure out what I should focus on and kind of move forward with, I ended up just kind of picking the things that I enjoyed most and that I felt that I would be able to make the most impact in. I also discovered I really thinned down activities the summer between freshman and sophomore year. And I discovered that I actually thinned down so much in my activities that I had room to pick up kind of these new interesting opportunities that would come up. So, for example, one thing that happened second semester of my sophomore year is that I was talking to my pre-health advisor about how I had tried a lot of different volunteer opportunities, but I hadn't really found anything that was a good fit. And so he started telling me about one of his colleagues, Astrid Hager, over at LAC plus USC. And she founded and runs something called the Violence Intervention Program. They work with a lot of different victims of violence, so victims of domestic abuse, victims of sexual assault, elder abuse, and child abuse. And kind of what I was really interested in is the victims of child abuse and neglect that she worked with. So I ended up being able to have enough time to work with Dr. Geller, Dr. Hager, and a lot of other USC pre-meds who were also really excited about this to form violence intervention volunteers. So we're a club here on campus that volunteers over at the violence intervention program, both the clinical and the non-clinical side of things. And that's definitely been one of my most meaningful extracurriculars. The other thing that happened sophomore year that kind of became a major extracurricular of mine was MedMind, the medication app I was telling you about. Since we kind of had the time at that point, because I'd opened room in my schedule to be able to explore more things and kind of only keep the things that really interested me, I worked with my team at that hackathon to take the idea out of the hackathon. We got $20,000 in funding, and we spent a lot of time we spent a lot of time developing it further, so we're still working on that now, and we're hoping to beta test within the next month or so I'm really excited about that. Other than that, I mostly just do my research, which is very time-consuming but fun. Yeah.
Okay, and you said you did a hackathon. Were there any other competitions you did?
Yeah, so USC has a lot of really interesting competitions that, especially now, are popping up. My freshman year was the first year that ASBME did its Makeathon. So what they do in the Makeathon every year is that they have some sort of challenge where you're supposed to work with the team to build a medical device. And so that was actually, when I was a freshman, really important, I think, because a lot of our classes didn't really have as much hands-on engineering back then. And so it was really interesting to work with people from all different years here who had different levels of experience and kind of learn from them. As I got a little bit more experience in other years of the Makeathon, I think that I was able to contribute in a slightly different way. So it was really interesting to kind of switch roles on my Makeathon teams throughout the years. And it was fun. We got to build a lot of medical devices. So my freshman year, we designed an improved splint. My sophomore year, we designed an ankle-foot orthotic where it was for patients with drop foot. So if their foot dropped when they were trying to walk, it would kind of lock it in place using an electromechanical orthotic that we built. And then my junior year, we ended up building a bionic hand, which was super fun. So those were kind of the ASBME Makeathons I did. I also like to do 1,000 pitches every year, which is an event that another club on campus, Spark SC, holds. And what they do there is they ask people to just pitch, I think it's like for 30 seconds, any idea that they think would be really cool. So I ended up doing 1,000 pitches every year. I think that's basically it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're involved in so much. And you're at that point now that you've already applied to medical schools, right? Can you talk a little bit about the timeline, just for maybe our listeners that are thinking about going into BME Pre-Med? When do you take the MCAT? When do you start applying? Just about that process and how that went for you.
Sure. So I think that the timeline for pre-meds now is changing a lot compared to before. where before, I would say like the majority of applicants definitely followed kind of a traditional timeline where they didn't take a gap year. Now a gap year is actually becoming something that is very, very common. Like on the interview trail, usually what I would see is that about half or more of the applicants, at my interviews at least, were on a gap year. So I think that I can't speak as much to the timeline for that since I don't really know. I haven't done that route, but I can speak to the traditional timeline because that's kind of what I've followed. So for the traditional timeline, kind of the first big thing that people need to be aware of is the MCAT. If you want to go into med school straight after college, then you're going to need to apply senior year, which means you need to take the MCAT sometime before that. What I ended up doing is taking the MCAT in my junior year right after winter break, which I think worked out really well because I kind of had all of winter break to study. And then I took it during the first 3 weeks of school, so I wasn't that stressed about school at the time that it was kind of distracting me from my MCAT studying. After that, the MCAS application, which is it's kind of like the Common App, but for medical schools. It opens on June 1st, so I prepared my application, I would say between around April and May, so that I could submit it in June. Medical school admissions for many schools are rolling, and so it's important to kind of make sure that you're prepared to submit everything on time or as early as possible so that you can kind of have a leg up since they are rolling admissions. And then the other thing with medical school apps is there are secondaries, which are kind of like supplemental essays for undergrad. And so I spent a lot of my summer, in addition to doing research, writing all of these secondaries. So that took a long time and got really repetitive after a while because a lot of the secondaries for schools are the same or very similar. So eventually I was just kind of cutting ones that I had already written so that they would fit for other schools. So that was all kind of the boring part of applying to medical school, I guess. The fun part is interview season. Interview season runs from about August to February, so it's a pretty wide range. And schools can invite you to interview, I would say, like July through February, which is also a pretty wide range. So what happens during this season is that you get interview invites at various points in the season, and you kind of schedule yourself for a day to go interview, and then you go to the medical school for a day. It's definitely kind of hectic to do during the school year because since a lot of the places that I applied to were kind of spread across the country, I did end up having to fly a lot and missing a lot of school because of that. So I had to make sure to make my class schedule pretty light for my senior year first semester. But interview season is also really fun because once you kind of get over the stress and get used to it, it's really cool to see a lot of different places in the country and to see how different schools do things differently and kind of start imagining yourself really as a medical student.
Oh, thank you. That was really informative because I actually didn't know that entire process.
Yeah, sure.
And just to conclude, is there any advice you have for maybe high school students, but also students like me who are looking down this path that you went on? Any advice about classes or extracurricular activities, looking at the process that you just went through?
Sure. I would say that my advice would be for extracurriculars to not necessarily focus on just being a typical pre-med. Pre-med is one of those weird tracks where kind of unlike other tracks, you're told that there are a specific list of boxes that you're supposed to check off. So you're supposed to have research experience, you're supposed to do clinical volunteering, and shadow, and do a bunch of other things. And I think that people can get caught up in trying to check all of these boxes kind of at the same time or in general and not really think as much about what they really enjoy. I think that in all of my medical school interviews, I've not necessarily talked about the things that check off the boxes, but the things that I'm really excited about. And so I think that doing things that you really like instead of trying to frame your extracurriculars based around a traditional pre-med track will help you be happier and hopefully do better in med school interviews too.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Nina.
Yeah, of course.
Rhea and Nina both revealed the thought processes and turning points that shaped their eventual career aspirations. Biomedical engineering is a versatile major that can lead to a variety of career paths, whether that be the biomedical industry or medical school or even something entirely different like consulting or patent law. One takeaway from my conversations with Rhea and Nina is that we should let our college experiences help us discover where our passions align. We shouldn't expect to know what we want to do with our career before getting to college. That's exactly what college is for. Thank you for listening and hope you tune in to the next Viterbi Life episode. Fight on!